I took my son into the mansion of the general who pacifies the state. Old Madame Yuan called me a whore and my son a bastard. Little did she know, the two grandsons she doted on, one legitimate, one concubine-born, were the real bastards. I raised my eyebrows and asked my son, "Still want to find your father?" He shook his head, knelt down, and kowtowed 3 times heavily. This kneel, all gratitude severed, all bonds broken, the Yuan clan's bloodline, cut off for good, I let out a sigh of relief, and led my son away with a smile. Just past the second gate, we heard a shrill cry of alarm, the incense burner in the ancestral hall. It was knocked off the stand by a cat and smashed to pieces. The incense has gone out, outside the mansion of the general who pacifies the state. My son said, "Mother, let's stay in the capital." This son of mine was as taciturn as a sealed gourd, but his word was harder than a medicine pestle. Once he said something, he never went back on it. "Fine then, young Valley Master, your call." He frowned, and shot me a glance that sent a chill down my spine. That look, he was the spitting image of my father. No wonder the old man had skipped me and named this little rascal his heir straight away. I said irritably, "You talk to him about staying in the capital. Don't let me take the blame for it." With that, I lifted my foot and kicked a clod of dry cow dung only to find it was wet on the inside. It splattered with a squelch, and the toe of my shoe was instantly covered in a big glob of cow shit. I stood there dumbfounded, and saw my son beside me, his lips pressed together in a thin line. His eyes, a mix of helplessness and exasperation, stared straight at me. I looked down at my shoe, then at his face, and burst out laughing first, sighing. "Sigh, with a mother like me, it's no wonder you're an old soul in a young body." Back at the inn, he picked up a brush and wrote a short note. "Mother, tell shopkeeper Lee tomorrow to ask a familiar broker to help us rent a courtyard." He paused, then added, "A quiet one, where I can read, and also practice martial arts and swordsmanship." I rolled over on the bed, and said lazily, "Rent a house. We're not short of money. Do we have to live so shabbily?" He handed me the written note. After reading it, I jumped off the bed with a start. "You little brat, I brought you to the capital to claim your family. Not to suffer this kind of hardship with you, too, to respected grandfather. Today, my bid to be recognized into the clan was rejected. This humiliation shall not be forgotten, and I have resolved to stay in the capital. I shall no longer accept your silver and gold from this day forth. Your grandson wishes to carve out a future for himself with his own 2 hands. Do not worry for me. Respectfully, your grandson." I watched helplessly as a carrier pigeon flew off with that deadly note. Before my death by poverty, I had to struggle a little longer. "Son, your mother can bear any hardship in this life, but the hardship of having no money, I can't bear that. Mother, with your medical skills, our days won't be too bad." I pulled a long face and said, "Once, people knelt outside the valley and offered 1,000 taels of gold for your treatment. Now you expect me to ring a tattered bell, like those wandering physicians, and go door to door asking need a doctor." The more I spoke, the more terrified I became. I clutched the corner of the quilt, my voice trembling a little. "I can't do it, son, I really can't." My son patted my shoulder. "Mother, you should learn what it's like for a woman without a husband to fend for herself, to run a household, to take care of a child. This unfilial child, I suspected he was doing this on purpose, just because I had given birth to him without his father's consent, for that matter." The innkeeper had a wide network of contacts, and within a few days, he had asked someone to find us a courtyard. I wanted to hire an old maid to cook, clean, and do the laundry, but my son said funds are tight and refused flat out. I was seething with anger, and didn't pay attention when lighting the fire in the kitchen. A spark flew onto the dry hay beside it, and flames shot up to half a man's height in an instant. I grabbed a broom to beat the fire out, only to fan it even more fiercely. In the end, it was my son who carried a bucket of water over and put the fire out. He stared at the blackened stove and the ash on my face, his brows furrowed tight. "Mother, don't step foot in the kitchen again. You'd better go out and practice medicine to earn money." He started learning to light fires and cook, and I had no choice but to change into men's clothes and go out to earn a living for the family. Exposing myself to the world, I slung a medicine box over my shoulder, rang a bronze bell, and wandered the streets and alleys. After wandering for half a day, a woman finally called me over. Walking into her house, I couldn't help but gasp, and clicked my tongue unconsciously. The adobe walls were cracked with holes the size of fists. The tables and chairs were either missing legs or arms. A gaunt child huddled on the kang, covered with a tattered, pitch-black cotton-padded jacket. The woman brought over half a bag of brown rice and stuffed it into my hand. "Master, this is all we have at home." 3. Starving. I stumbled back home, threw down my medicine box and bronze bell, and collapsed onto the bed, spread-eagled. My son brought over a bowl of rice porridge and a small plate of side dishes. "Mother, get up and eat." No mood. As soon as the words left my mouth, my traitorous stomach rumbled long and loud. "Eat." My stomach rumbled again, in perfect agreement. My face turned red, and I stopped being stubborn. Once I would have complained that plain rice porridge was too bland, but today it tasted exceptionally delicious, with a faint sweet taste of rice on my tongue. "This porridge is great. Did you use imperial pink rice for it? This is just the most ordinary rice. We're in the capital now. Even if we had money, we couldn't buy tribute rice." A trace of bitterness welled up in my heart. "Son, do we really have to suffer when we don't have to?" Back in the Medicine King Valley, we fed imperial pink rice to the chickens. Now we can't even get a little to cook porridge with. This stubborn boy always pretended to be deaf when he heard something he didn't like. After I put down my bowl and chopsticks, he cleaned up while asking, "Mother, how much did you earn from practicing medicine today? Is the consultation fee enough for a few days' expenses?" I said sheepishly, "Don't ask. I didn't get a single coin, and even spent a string of copper coins of my own." He lifted his eyelids, his eyes dark and deep, waiting for an explanation. I often suspected he had forgotten to drink the Meng Po soup when he was reincarnated, a teenager not yet 14, with the eyes of a 40-year-old man. The sick child only has a widowed mother, and their family is so poor they can't even open the pot for food. I wrote them a prescription, but they didn't even have money to buy the medicine. So, anyway, I felt sorry for them. So I did it as a good deed to accumulate merit. My son nodded, then brought up another matter. "I've found teachers for literature and martial arts. I just need to prepare the tuition fees first." I twisted my handkerchief, unsure how to respond, but he spoke calmly. "We have no spare money at home. Mother, let's pawn your jewelry first to make up the sum. Don't feel bad about it. When I master my skills in the future, I'll buy you something better." Me. 4. Though the Medicine King Valley was hidden in a deep valley shrouded in miasma, the treasures accumulated by generations were already piled up like mountains. I had grown up in a pile of gold. The marbles I used to shoot birds were pearls the size of thumbs, and even the latrine was hung with night pearls, even when I occasionally went out of the valley to wander. I never ran out of banknotes on me. Otherwise, how would I have met Yuan Jinghuan, that dandy from the capital? Who would have thought he would turn over a new leaf so quickly, leaving me pregnant and scurrying back to the Medicine King Valley in disgrace? I thought Yuan Jinghuan's heart was black enough. It wasn't until I walked into a pawn shop in the capital that I realized the world was full of different kinds of black hearts, each in its own way. The shopkeeper twirled my gold hairpin and gold bracelets in his hand, and cut the price by 30% on the spot, muttering something about depreciation of used goods. An apprentice beside him pretended to check the purity, secretly wiped something on his fingertips, then turned to the shopkeeper and said, "This jade pendant has a crack." The shopkeeper took it with a show of solemnity. His fingertips paused on the seal character Yuan carved on it, his face changing several times. In the end, he placed the jade pendant aside without a word, and started clicking his abacus furiously. He named a price, his voice a little shakier than before. "Fine, seeing as you're in a hurry for money, we'll close the deal at this price." I took the silver and turned to leave, when he suddenly called out loudly, "Sana, there have been a lot of thieves in the capital lately. Escort the madam home." My heart skipped a beat, but I said nothing. Only clutching the silver in my sleeve tighter and walking out. The apprentice followed me at a distance, his steps light, and actually walked me all the way to the door of my courtyard. When I handed the silver pouch to my son, I told him about the pawnshop keeper's strange behavior. After listening, my son fell silent for a moment, then asked, "You pawned the Yuan family's jade pendant too?" I grunted in assent. "We'd disowned the family anyway, what use was that trinket?" My son said nothing. Only told me to be careful these days, to go out as little as possible. 5. It was when Yuan Jinghuan's concubine came to the door that I finally understood why my son had told me not to go out these days. A retinue of servants surrounded Xu Baozhu, who was dressed in silk and satin from head to toe. She tilted her chin up, her eyes and brows sharp with the shrewdness of a merchant's daughter. "Are you the whore who brought a bastard to the general's mansion a few days ago?" She twirled the Yuan family's jade pendant I'd thrown away in her hand. It was then that I found out she was the daughter of a wealthy merchant, and that the pawn shop where I'd pawned the jade pendant was part of her dowry. "The capital is no place for you." She flung a few banknotes at me, her tone arrogant with charity. "Take this money and leave the capital, otherwise, I'll have someone break your legs." I hadn't even opened my mouth to reply, when a clear teenage voice came from the door. "Whether my mother leaves or not is none of an outsider's business." My son stood there. I didn't know when he'd arrived, his back ramrod straight. "I am not a bastard. I am a descendant of the Sioux clan of the Medicine King Valley." His gaze swept over the woman, cold and detached, far beyond his years. "If you dare to touch my mother, you will make an enemy of the entire Medicine King Valley." Xu Baozhu had clearly heard of the Medicine King Valley's reputation, and her arrogance faded a little, but she still stubbornly said, "So what if you're a descendant of the Sioux clan of the Medicine King Valley? You still threw yourself at the general's mansion to claim your father." "I came to the capital to temper myself. The so-called family recognition was nothing more than a misunderstanding." He paused, then his voice rose sharply. "The Medicine King Valley has long had ties with the imperial family. The eldest princess regards my grandfather as an honored guest. Are you sure you want to make an enemy of us?" I stared at him in surprise. This child, from the day he was born, had only ever called my father Valley Master or grandfather on mother's side. That one word, grandfather, spoke volumes. For the rest of his life, he would only recognize his identity as a descendant of the Sioux clan. With the Yuan family, all ties were severed, all connections broken, never to be mended again. That was his nature, stubborn to a fault. Once he said something, it was carved in stone, unchangeable, not even a little. 6. Xu Baozhu never came to the door again after that day, and our days returned to peace. But she had brought a large retinue with her. Perhaps someone had run their mouth, or perhaps she had let it slip unintentionally. The news that descendants of the Medicine King are in the capital spread for some reason, when the first winter jasmine flower bloomed in the courtyard. Someone came to the door seeking medical treatment. When neighbors or poor families came, we never haggled over the payment. We'd take some homegrown melons and vegetables, or freshly picked fruits, and treat them with all our heart. But it was a different story with high officials, nobles, and wealthy merchants. By the rules of the Medicine King Valley, they must first present a handwritten visiting card, then prepare a heavy gold gift before they could step inside. We charged a call-out fee for house visits, and after the treatment, the host had to prepare a thank you gift for our journey back. Even in this capital 1,000 li away, The valley's rules passed down for generations could not be broken in the slightest. As time went by, not only people in the capital came to us, but also nobles from surrounding cities. Drawn by the news, their carriages and horses blocked the alley entrance in an endless stream. My son's daytime studies were interrupted. And when his martial arts master taught him fistfights, someone was always peeking over the wall. Not a moment of peace to be had. Helpless, we moved twice under the moonlight overnight, but within a few days, we were once again disturbed by those who found us, until the day we saved Master Zhong from the south of the city, who insisted on gifting us a deep mansion with a courtyard on the outskirts of the capital. The mansion was hidden behind pine and cypress trees, with high walls and a deep compound, finally blocking out the noise of the outside world. On the day we moved in, my son stood in the courtyard, looking up at the clear sky, and finally let out a sigh of relief. There was at last a hint of youthful ease in his brows and eyes. We had accumulated a great deal of consultation fees, enough for my son and I to live on for 10 years without lifting a finger. I hired a few hard-working servants to take care of cooking and laundry, and with my newfound freedom, I snuck out every day to seek pleasure. Little did I know, it only took a few days for me to stir up trouble. 7. Master Zhong came to see my son, and the two chatted in the courtyard. A few days ago, a big incident happened at the opera house in the west of the city. Two dandies from the capital got drunk and acted unruly, harassing a young actress playing the female lead on stage. They went home and slept through the night, but the next day they seemed to be possessed by an evil spirit, running amok like madmen in their homes. I heard several imperial physicians were called in, but none of them could figure out what was wrong with them. I hid behind the window and eavesdropped, my hand slipping so the teacup clattered to the ground. My son cleared his throat lightly. My mother has a cat. Meow. I mimicked a cat's meow in a pinched voice. Master Zhong laughed. After my mother raised a tabby cat, things have been breaking at home too. But the cat only smashes trinkets. Those two dandies, though, are like wrecking balls. Heard they're now tied up in bed. My son chuckled softly and said nothing. That was his temper. He never asked questions if others didn't speak, and would never take trouble upon himself voluntarily. After more than a year of acquaintance, Master Zhong knew this well. He had to speak up awkwardly. It turned out that one of the dandies was the son of his benefactor. He was a man who repaid kindness, so he had to bite the bullet and ask for help. Moreover, he had prepared a heavy gold gift according to the Medicine King Valley's rules, which was in the carriage in the courtyard. My son fell silent for a moment, and finally nodded, following him to the dandy's mansion, a single set of acupuncture needles, and the man sobered up at once. Before leaving, he only left one sentence. This matter must not be spoken of to anyone outside. He knew well that he needed peace and quiet for the next 2 years. He had to prepare for the imperial civil examination in literature, and strive for the top rank in the martial arts examination. He did not want to be disturbed by trivial matters in the slightest. Unfortunately, he had bad luck. He had an unreliable mother like me, who held him back at every turn. 8. When my son came back, I smiled obsequiously, waiting on him hand and foot, pouring tea and fetching water. How could he not know that I was the one who had made those two dandies go mad? I had been holed up at home these past few days, unusually well behaved. One glance at me was enough for him to know I'd gotten into trouble again. He just didn't press for details. You are not to go out for the next 6 months, I protested. No way, 3 months at most. He shot me a cold glance and said softly, then I'll ask grandfather to send someone to take you back to the Medicine King Valley. I cursed a carbon copy of my old man under my breath, and backed down verbally. 6 months is 6 months then. He teased me for the first time in a long while. Being under house arrest in the capital is still better than being in the Medicine King Valley. Sigh. From the day I returned to the Medicine King Valley with a big belly, I had completely lost my freedom. That cruel father of mine always put me under house arrest for at least a year at a time. Now it was my son's turn, 6 months minimum. Thankfully, my son was softer-hearted than my father after all. When Master Zhong brought the thank you gift from his benefactor's family, he also brought a piece of news. The other dandy who had gone mad was actually Xu Baozhu's younger brother, Xu Baoping. Old Master Xu was a lecher with a flock of children and concubines in his family. He had never paid any attention to this worthless son of his, but this dandy was Xu Baozhu's own younger brother by the same mother. For the sake of the concubine-born eldest son she had given birth to for the Yuan family, old Madame Yuan had turned a blind eye, allowing her to use the general's mansion's visiting card to invite imperial physicians to treat her own brother. But the imperial physicians prescribed several medicines, and none of them worked. Hearing from the servants that young Master Kui, who had gone mad with Xu Baoping, had recovered completely, Xu Baozhu actually made a scene at his door, insisting that they hand over the prescription. Master Kui was a minor official at the Court of Imperial Sacrifices, only a 9th-rank official. But he was a member of the powerful Kui clan of Qinghe, with intricate marital ties to the imperial family and other aristocratic clans behind him. Madame Kui, the matriarch, had long resented Xu Baoping for leading her son astray, so she ordered the house guards to beat the vicious servants Xu Baozhu had brought with her to vent her anger. The men Xu Baozhu had brought were all from the mansion of the general who pacifies the state. This was a direct slap in the face for the Yuan family. Even if old Madame Yuan had no desire to stand up for her, she had to go to the Kui mansion to demand an explanation. After exchanging a few perfunctory pleasantries, old Madame Kui said bluntly, "A concubine of the mansion of the general who pacifies the state is actually more arrogant than the legal wife, leading men to someone's door, shouting and threatening to beat and kill. Our small Kui clan really doesn't know how to make amends for this." After finding out the whole truth, old Madame Yuan nearly fainted from anger. The nobles in the capital were now secretly mocking old Madame Yuan for not knowing the difference between important and trivial matters. And lowering her own status, she had damaged the family's dignity for a concubine, and even made an enemy of the powerful Kui clan of Qinghe. 9. Master Zhong talked like a storyteller, and I listened with great amusement. But my son was not pleased. His mind was all on his books and martial arts training. In his absence, Master Zhong felt quite awkward. It's not proper for a man outside the family to stay with you for too long. My wife is a lively person who loves company. Why not let her come over often to keep you entertained? I had met his wife twice before. Her features were bright and open, and her words were full of vitality. Sure enough, she was never idle once she arrived. The inside secrets of all the mansions in the capital came out of her mouth in far more detail than Master Zhong's version. I ate the pastries she brought, listened to the gossip she told, and really didn't feel bored at all. During our chat, I noticed her face looked pale and weak, so I wrote her a prescription for nourishment and conditioning. In just 2 months, she became pregnant. Master Zhong came specially to express his gratitude. Actually, when I asked my wife to come keep you company, I had this selfish motive in mind. He lowered his voice to a whisper. My wife and I have been praying for a child for many years, but all the imperial physicians said her body is perfectly healthy. I'm afraid the problem is with me, so I sighed inwardly. He had clearly wanted me to his wife's body, but he had to go through such a big roundabout, only daring to admit it after things worked out. If he had just said it straight out, it would have been done a long time ago. Looking at Master Zhong's awkward smile, I had to say a few comforting words. Although my prescription is good, it's not a magic elixir when it comes to pregnancy. The worst thing is to be too anxious. The more eager you are, the harder it is to conceive. For the past 6 months, she's been laughing and chatting with me. Her mood has relaxed, and with the conditioning of the prescription, she was able to get her wish. Master Zhong's wife's pregnancy was hard one, so to be safe, She no longer went out easily, but my house arrest still had 6 months to go. How was I going to pass the time? Knowing my trouble, Master Zhong's wife asked her own cousin, the young wife of the Kui family, the one with the court of imperial sacrifices, to come keep me company. This Mrs. Kui Zhong was even more of a delight, because her husband's clan was related to the imperial family. She knew a great many palace secrets. She was young and quick-tongued, speaking without the slightest restraint, and I listened with my heart in my mouth. 10. I never knew the harem was so dark. When women fight, they are no less ruthless than court officials. Military officers fight with swords and spears, civil officials attack with words and pens, but the women of the harem take lives with a smile. I secretly rejoiced that I had never entered the palace. With my lack of scheming, I would have died within 3 days. In comparison, the fall I took with Yuan Jinghuan more than 10 years ago was nothing at all. Although I had been abandoned without mercy, at least I had given birth to such an outstanding son in the 2 years we had been in the capital. Su Yenji's features had matured, his frame had stretched tall, and he was more upright and handsome than ever. On the day Mrs. Kui Zhong caught a glimpse of him by chance, she actually blushed, and her usually quick tongue stammered. She kept saying that if she had a younger sister, she would definitely betroth her to him, and praised his facial features, saying he was destined for great wealth and honor in the future. Grateful for her keeping me company for 2 months, I gave her a prescription. One that not only nourished the inner body and moisturized the skin, but also slimmed the waist to be as slender as a willow branch. But there was a crucial detail to this prescription. A single tiny mistake in the dosage would harm one's ability to have children, but her husband was a libertine. Only by keeping him by her side in the boudoir could there even be a chance of having children. She took the medicine according to the prescription for 3 months, and sure enough, her skin became as white as snow, and her waist as slim as a delicate thread. Her husband doted on her more and more each day, and even broke the rule to take her with him to a Kui clan family banquet. The wives of the direct line who had ignored her in the past now all gathered around her to chat. During the feast, someone asked her, "How did you get that libertine husband of yours to settle down?" She smiled, twirling a handkerchief between her fingers. "What method is there? Perhaps he's just tired of playing around." Her words were light and casual, but a hint of imperceptible pride flashed across the corner of her eye. No one knew that the charm she had cultivated with that prescription, plus a little tact in handling him, had made him settle down. Only the careful eldest wife of the main house noticed the clue, and quietly asked her for the prescription. 11. A cause for universal celebration. I was released from house arrest. The first thing I did was go to the drunken immortal tower to celebrate, and I booked the most expensive private room, the listening to the wind pavilion. My son had no desire to go, but I dragged him out the door by force. He was now a head taller than me, dressed in a tight martial arts uniform, looking heroic and striking. As we entered the restaurant, we brushed past a few men dressed as military officers. The leader stared at us again and again, muttering to himself, "This young man, why does he look so much like General Yuan?" A thought flickered in my heart, this man must know Yuan Jinghuan. But what could I do? My son looked more and more like him as he grew up. After a few cups of wine, memories of the past flooded back. There was a rule in the Medicine King Valley for disciples to travel after completing their studies. They had to travel from south to north to gain experience. Firstly, to hone their medical skills. One could never become a great physician by staying cooped up in the valley forever. Secondly, to accumulate merit and do good deeds, collect heavy gold from the rich, and help the poor in their distress. When I reached the right age, I too had to take this journey. I was just 17 when I left the valley alone for the first time. When I left the valley, my senior brother fussed over me like a father, pressing me with a full set of poisons for self-defense. My real father, though, acted like a wealthy elder, pressing a chest of banknotes into my hands and telling me to spend it freely. I disguised myself as a man, spending gold like water all the way, a stark contrast to my senior brother's frugal travels. It was precisely this ostentation that led to my downfall. I reached the Jiangnan region just in time for the Lantern Festival. By day, a man in a brocade robe on a pleasure boat looked as ethereal as an immortal descended to earth. And I was captivated by him at first sight. By night, at the lantern market, we met again. We both set our eyes on the most striking colored glaze revolving lantern at the same time. While others haggled over the price, I slapped down a solid gold ingot without a second thought. The vendor handed it to me with a beaming smile. He stared for a moment, then burst out laughing. "What a bold young sir you are. This tussle for a lantern, unexpectedly, sparked a fated connection." I was bewitched by his looks. Naturally, my disguise as a young man was quite handsome too, and he seemed equally smitten. Beneath the flowers and the moonlight, he swore he would never marry another. Young and impetuous, I yielded half-heartedly, and we crossed the line. He promised he would come back for me and make me his wife. I waited for more than a month at an inn in Jiangnan. But no wedding sedan chair arrived. Instead, I found I was with child. Still unwilling to give up, I journeyed to the capital with my unborn baby in my womb. The day I entered the city happened to be his wedding day. 12. From a distance, I saw him riding a tall steed, his red wedding robe blazing like fire. I pressed a hand to my belly, my teeth clenched so hard they ached. Did he really think the daughter of the Medicine King's Su clan was someone to be trifled with? Long before he left, I had slipped a love gu into his tea. Without this, how could my father have only me as his daughter? Back in the day, my mother had left her mountain home to enter the Medicine King Valley precisely because he had willingly taken the gu. My ruthless mother had originally lived deep in the 10,000 Great Mountains, her family the hereditary guardians of the secret manuals of gu sorcery. She had fed gu with her own blood since childhood, able to control insects with a single thought. Tragically, she passed away before I turned 10. Before her death, the only thing she taught me was how to raise the love leech gu. This creature resembled a silver thread, easily hidden in tea or wine. Once it entered the body, it took up residence in the dantian. If the man lay with anyone other than the one who cast the gu, the leech would secrete a viscous fluid to block conception, rendering him unable to impregnate another. Only when he shared a bed with the gu caster would the leech lie dormant. So I was certain the sons born to Yuan Jinghuan's wife and concubine were both bastards. How ridiculous that his mother treated the only real grandson like a weed, and cherished the fakes as if they were precious jewels. I drank more and more hastily, and as drunkenness washed over me, my son helped me into the carriage. Back home, he carried me on his back to the bedroom. I mumbled against his shoulder, "Son, that Yuan is a bastard, but you are the finest of men. One day, Mother will find you a wonderful wife. You're 16 now. If there's a girl you like, just say the word. We're not short of money. Even a noble lady from the capital is fine. I'll ask your grandfather to pay a visit to the eldest princess's mansion, and getting you an official position will be a piece of cake." My son replied in a low, muffled voice, "I don't want to rely on anyone. I want to try on my own. Even if I Su Yenji were a man with no surname, I could carve out a future for myself." Dazed, I raised my thumb. "Good son. What ambition? Better than your mother. I just want to live a comfortable life as a wealthy idler." 13. A year before he planned to take the imperial examinations, his tutor recommended his own mentor to him. He was a retired senior academician. Before leaving, the tutor bowed and said, "Madam, your son is a true uncarved jade. My modest knowledge fears it would hold him back. My old mentor is unrivaled in the capital. With his guidance, your son will surely top the imperial examinations one day." I knew he spoke from the bottom of his heart for my son's sake, and hastily thanked him for his kindness. He waved his hand, then instructed my son a few more words. Once you enter Master Ouyang's school, you must devote yourself even more to diligent study. My son knelt down to thank his tutor. At 17, my son sat for the examinations. The first was the prefectural examination in Shuntian Prefecture, which he took in the spring. When he came out, he only said, the questions were not difficult, but they tested the finest details. On the day the results were posted, his name was on the list. He had become a Shotsi. The prefect summoned him and asked about his teacher. He replied respectfully, I study under the venerable Master Ouyang. The prefect said, a great teacher breeds a great disciple. With his scholarly title in hand, he returned to his tutor to study statecraft essays. After a month of rest, the provincial imperial examination was held in the autumn, with the examination hall set up in the Imperial Academy on the outskirts of the capital. The 9-day examination period began, and he went in with dry rations in his pocket. When he came out, he smiled and said to me, the tutor guessed 2 of the exam questions correctly. On the day the results were posted, the messengers announcing his success blocked our gate. He had passed the provincial examination and become a Juran, with a high ranking. Master and Madame Zhong came to congratulate us with their son, and specially asked Yanji to hold their precious boy. Madame Zhong was pregnant again, and with her swollen belly, she spoke words of good fortune. Let my Debao soak up the good luck of the god of literature. Maybe he'll pass the imperial examinations on his first try too. Madame Zhong told me that Mrs. Zhong was also pregnant, and her belly was too big for her to come and congratulate us in person, so she had sent a congratulatory gift with her. I would give her a prescription for fetal care and some rare tonics. The next year came the Metropolitan Examination, held in the Imperial Academy of the Ministry of Rites. After the 3 rounds of examinations, Yanji came out holding the folding fan his tutor had given him, saying, I wrote the statecraft essays smoothly. He passed the Metropolitan Examination and became a Gongsha, and the Palace Examination followed soon after. That day, he wore a newly made blue cloth robe. When he came back, he said, the Emperor asked about agricultural affairs, and I was fortunate enough to answer him well. A few days later, the imperial announcement was made. He ranked in the 2nd class, and was bestowed the title of Jinsha. From the prefectural examination to a Jinsha, it took him just a year and a half. Beneath the very nose of the emperor, relying solely on Master Ouyang's teachings and his own hard work, he had earned his scholarly title with nothing but a brush in his hand. 14. More than 4 years had passed since my son and I came to the capital, and we had never laid eyes on Yuan Jinghuan. Yet now, just as my son had embarked on his official career, the Yuan suddenly came to our door. A woman dressed in fine silk and satin claimed to be Su Yenji's aunt. The gatekeeper let her in. As soon as Sun Yuansha sat down on the Grand Master's chair, she spoke as if she were among family. Dear sister-in-law, I am Jinghuan's 2nd elder sister. Hurry and call my nephew Yenji out so I can have a look at him. Though I abhorred the Yuans, I would not strike a smiling face. So I forced down my disgust and said, he has gone to a feast with his fellow Jinsha. She seemed not to notice the coldness in my words, and chattered on warmly. My son is an official in the court. He saw Yenji at the Chonglin banquet and said he looks just like his uncle, as if carved from the same mold. He also said, when you compare the two, those 2 cousins in the general's mansion don't even look like their uncle's real sons. I praised her with a hidden barb. Your son is truly sharp-eyed and clear-headed. No wonder he's an official in the court. Her face bloomed with pride. My son works in the Ministry of Personnel. Though his official rank is not high, he has a wide network of connections. If Yenji recognizes his clan and enters the Yuan household register, my son can give him a little boost in the ministry in the future, and his path will be 10 times smoother. This is a blessing no one else could beg for, a blessing. I almost laughed in anger. I was about to retort with some sharp words when a loud laugh suddenly came from the door. I'd like to ask, just which grave of the Yuan family did this blessing rise from as green smoke? The voice was loud and resonant, brimming with vitality. I spun around abruptly, and saw my father walking slowly in. When he looked at Sun Yuanxia, his gaze was as cold as ice. Who are you? Sun Yuanxia, a woman who had spent her life in the inner chambers, was cowed by his imposing aura. Father ignored her, twirled the green jade archer's ring on his finger, and drawled, I just heard this madam say her son works in the Ministry of Personnel. Sun Yuanxia puffed out her chest at once, as if showing off some priceless treasure. That's right. My son works in the Department of Personnel Selection of the Ministry of Personnel. He is a court official. No matter how small his rank. Oh, father raised his eyebrows. The Department of Personnel Selection. What kind of petty official post is that? The only official I know in the Ministry of Personnel is He Daosheng. At those words, Sun Yuanxia's face turned deathly pale in an instant. He Daosheng was none other than the Minister of Personnel. 15. Sun Yuanxia's son was no more than a 9th-rank clerk, and could barely even catch a glimpse of Minister He. Father took 2 steps forward, looking down at her from above. How dare your son talk about boosting my Su clan's son? From the day Yanji was born, he has had nothing to do with your Yuan family. I'll tell you this, even if he one day enters the cabinet and becomes a prime minister, he will still bear the surname Su. You Yuans want to curry favor with him. First weigh whether you are worthy. Now, take your blessing and get out of here. That final word, out, struck Sun Yuanxia like a heavy hammer to the heart. She jumped to her feet abruptly, stumbled as her maid supported her, and fled the courtyard in a fluster. Father deigned not to argue with a woman. Turning around, he forgot all about her. His face lit up with eagerness. When will Yanji be back? I haven't seen him in more than 4 years. I miss him terribly. I felt a twinge of jealousy and said, Father, you only think of him. Don't you miss your daughter at all? Of course I do. How could I not? Come. First accompany your father for a few drinks at the Drunken Immortal Tower. My father and I drank until our faces were flushed. We had just reached the courtyard gate when the gate boy ran up to us and said, Madam, the young master is back. He brought a half-dead old beggar with him. This was something new. Father's legs were swifter than mine, and he was the first to reach the guest room. When I lifted the door curtain and walked in, I caught him clutching my son's hand tightly. Unwilling to let go, Father's eyes were shining brightly as he looked his grandson up and down, his brows and eyes brimming with delight, and low exclamations of admiration escaped his throat every now and then. Good boy, such a fine boy. I haven't seen you in years, and you've grown so tall and straight. The pride in his voice was almost tangible, as if the young man standing before him was not a newly minted jinsha, but the most prized medicinal seedling he had ever nurtured with his own hands. Yanji was more composed than ever, and he smiled faintly. Grandfather, let's not hurry with the reunion for now. He stepped aside slightly, revealing the bed behind him. Hurry and look at this old man on the bed. Can you save him? 16. Only then did I notice the old man huddled on the bed. My son lifted the quilt, and a pungent stench of sourness and rot exploded into the air at once. The smell was a vile mix of aged wine lees, sweat, urine, and the stench of poultry. I retched several times, feeling dizzy for a moment. Mother, you go outside. I pinched my nose and shook my head firmly. Father's smile faded, his eyes turned sharp, and he strode to the bed. As soon as his fingertips touched the old man's wrist to feel his pulse, his brows furrowed. Old wounds have burst open, coupled with severe internal organ damage. This old man has a truly tough life. When he took the cold jade medicine bottle from his arms, my pupils constricted sharply in an instant. The 9 Revolution Resurrection Elixir. This was the life-saving medicine Father never let leave his side. Each pill of this medicine requires gathering peerless rare treasures from all the famous mountains and rivers, and refining them over 5 years. The cost alone for a single pill runs 10,000 taels of gold. To put it plainly, as long as you still have a breath left. Even if your soul has already reached the Yama's palace, this medicine can drag you back from the brink of death. That night I asked my father, "Father, a few years ago a wealthy merchant offered 100,000 taels of gold for a single 9-revolution resurrection elixir, and you wouldn't part with it. Now you're being so generous, feeding it to an old beggar." Father flicked my forehead hard. "You have a pair of beautiful eyes, but they're practically useless. That old man is no ordinary person." I sneered. "Ordinary people don't smell that terrible." Father glared at me. "When he wakes up, you treat him with the utmost respect, as an honored guest. Otherwise, when we go back to the Medicine King Valley, I won't let you off the hook." I heard the hint of departure in his words and hastily asked, "Father, you just arrived, are you planning to leave already?" He sighed. "That old man in the guest room and I had some feuds when we were young. Now that he's fallen on such hard times, I can't bear to look at him any longer. Someone who could make my son go out of his way to help, and move my father to compassion." This old man was definitely no mortal. 17. The old beggar my son had brought back lay unconscious for 3 days. On the 4th day, as soon as we heard he'd woken up, Father left at once. I hated to see him go and accompanied him to the city gate. He truly couldn't stop worrying about me, and even at the moment of parting, he was still urging me to treat the old beggar well. "If you don't listen to me, when we return to the Medicine King Valley, I'll make you copy all the medical books in the valley from cover to cover." This punishment was nothing short of cruel for me. With my writing speed, copying all of them would take about 10 years. I'd never get to leave the valley again. Threatened by my father outside, and coming home to hear that my son was personally attending to the old beggar's medicinal baths, my heart felt as if it were stuffed with cotton, and sour bile rose to my throat. My rebellious streak flared up, and I thought spitefully, "I'll treat this old beggar badly on purpose. At worst, I'll just stay in the capital and never go back to the Medicine King Valley." I was still figuring out how to drive him away. As if he'd read my mind, the old beggar took the initiative to ask to leave. My son supported his arm and said gently, "Old sir, your body is far too weak right now. You should stay and recuperate for a few more days before leaving." The old beggar seemed to abhor being touched by others and shoved him hard. My son stumbled a few steps, lost his balance, and stumbled backward, his lower back slamming hard into the corner of a table, like a cat whose tail had been stepped on. I flew into a rage in an instant and shouted, "You old bastard, how dare you push my son? He saved your life. And this is how you repay him? No wonder you're living on the streets in your old age." My son pulled me outside and said softly, "If he goes out now, he'll die for sure. We went to so much trouble to save him, it would be a shame to let it all be for nothing." Seeing that I was still seething with anger, he whispered again, "If he dies, grandfather's 9-revolution resurrection elixir will have been wasted, and word of it getting out will ruin the Medicine King Valley's reputation." My anger subsided a little, but the fire in my heart still raged. I said in a loud, deliberate voice, "You better think carefully. I'm a person who holds a grudge and repays every slight. If he dares to stay, I'll make his life a living hell." 18. The old beggar didn't leave. He sat in the corridor all day, soaking up the sun, as silent as a mute. As soon as my son stepped over the threshold, I said in a sarcastic tone, "Some people receive kindness from others, yet act like emperors. They can't even be bothered to say a single human word." He didn't even lift an eyelid, as if he were not only mute, but also deaf. I felt like I'd punched a pile of cotton. That night I specifically told the maid, "Don't heat the bath water for that old bastard. Just scoop it straight from the well." I'd intended to freeze him half to death, but instead, he started bathing even more frequently. When it clicked, I slammed my fist on the table. So the old bastard likes cold water baths. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. The next day, I slipped something into his food. The servants said he spent the whole night running to the latrine. I was feeling quite pleased with myself when I saw my son carrying a medicine bowl into his room. "Old sir, from now on I'll eat with you, so you don't upset your stomach again." My son's voice came through clearly. I fell into deep doubt. Is this little brat really my son? To teach this old beggar a lesson, I matched wits with my son. Though the old beggar was occasionally the victim of my pranks, he remained as unflappable as ever, and no amount of driving could get rid of him. After Yanji passed the metropolitan examination, he set aside his martial arts practice for a while. Master Jiang thought his student, having become a jinsha, would abandon martial arts for literature. After all, the court now valued literature over martial arts. What kind of jinsha would spend their days wielding swords and practicing martial arts? Unexpectedly, before long, the familiar sounds of martial arts practice rang out in the courtyard again, even more frequent and intense than before. Only then did Master Jiang realize the truth. This wasn't about abandoning martial arts at all, it was about mastering both pen and sword. The old beggar leaned against the door, squinting as he watched my son practice boxing. When Master Jiang corrected his movements, his brow suddenly furrowed, as if he had words stuck in his throat. In the end, though, it all turned into an almost inaudible snort. Yet the shouts from the martial arts training ground were like a string, pulling him there time and again. He would stand there for an hour at a time. Sometimes his eyes were empty, as if he were staring at the smoke and dust of decades past. Other times they would suddenly light up, sharp enough to cut through the wind. "That old man has a murderous aura about him," Master Jiang said to his disciple, wiping sweat from his brow. "Not the rough, reckless aura of street brawls, the aura of someone who has seen blood." 19. I thought after speaking so plainly to Sun Yuansha last time, the Yuan family would have given up on claiming Yanji back. Unexpectedly, the Yuans came crawling back again, this time with an even more arrogant attitude. Yuan Jinghuan's legal wife, a daughter of the Xiao clan of Lanling, appeared. She put on the airs of a legal wife and spoke with a magnanimous air, as if acting for the good of the clan. "Sister Su, the absurdities between you and my husband are nearly 20 years in the past. Now that Yanji has become a jinsha, he can't keep living outside the clan forever. His mother misses him terribly and has urged me to come here 3 times a day." I cut her off directly. "Spit it out. What does your Yuan family have in mind?" Madame Xiao said. "His mother's wish is that since he is the Yuan clan's blood, he can't be left to wander outside. Let him recognize his ancestors and return to the clan, enter the Yuan household register as a concubine-born son. As for you," she paused, a hint of sarcasm flashing in her eyes, "kneel down and offer me a cup of tea, and I'll recognize you as my sister. Though you'll be a concubine, it's still a proper status. Yanji won't be called a bastard anymore either." I finally understood this vile woman had no intention of letting Yanji return to the Yuan family at all. She was only pretending to obey the old madam, deliberately provoking me with her words. I couldn't stand the hypocrisy of these noble ladies and raised my hand to stop her from speaking further. "It was my mistake to let you in the door. I wanted to see what nonsense you'd spout, but I didn't expect you to start talking pure shit. This is the Su family's home. If you dare to spew more filth from your mouth, I'll make the servants scoop up a ladle of dung and pour it down your throat." That day the cook had given me an idea, to deal with the old beggar. I shouldn't be too refined, I should learn the way market shrews hurl insults. I'd squatted in the market for days, sneaking lessons. I hadn't even had a chance to try it out on the old beggar, yet this woman got to taste it first. 20. Madame Xiao had never heard such filthy words in her life. Her face turned green and then white in quick succession. She had brought a large retinue of servants with her. The older maids could barely hold back their composure, but the young maids bit their lips, struggling not to laugh. Madame Xiao flung her sleeves and stormed off. But the old beggar had somehow squatted down in the porch, watching the whole scene like a spectator. A burly old maid kicked him hard into the corridor. I lunged forward in a single step and kicked her into the corridor too. Madame Xiao shouted in anger, "How dare you hit my person?" I shot her a provocative look. "Are you blind? That mad dog of yours pounced on my family first." As the old maid who'd fallen in the corridor was helped up by the young maids, she still insisted stubbornly, "He's just an old servant eavesdropping. I was helping you teach him a lesson, why aren't you grateful?" I shot her a glare. "Who told you he's a servant?" "He's clearly my son's," I stammered here, my mind going blank, unsure what identity to give him. Just then, I saw my son walking into the courtyard. A flash of inspiration hit me, and I made something up on the spot. "He's my son's godfather," Madame Xiao scoffed. "Such an old godfather, that's a rare sight. No wonder his real father won't claim him, so he has to find a godfather instead." The servants behind her burst into loud laughter, their faces full of mockery. Jiang Xia was 80 when King Wen treated him like a father. Bai Lishi was 70 when Duke Mu regarded him as a father. You ignorant women only fixate on age and prattle on. So much for the great Xiao clan of Lanling. My son's voice was not loud, but it was as clear and heavy as a bronze bell hitting the ground, instantly drowning out the laughter. Madame Xiao's smile froze when she saw him. Hatred surged in her eyes, mixed with fear, and an unmaskable wariness. Yinji looked too much like Yuan Jinghuan. This was even more terrifying than his excellence. After all, the son she'd given birth to was not of the Yuan clan's blood, because the concubine had given birth to a concubine-born eldest son, and her own belly had remained empty for a long time. She had no choice but to conceive a son by another man to secure her position as legal wife. Before leaving, Madame Xiao said to Yenji, "That 9th-rank clerk from the Sun family went to great lengths to hold you back by just a single rank, but I can cut off your official career completely. Just you wait and see." 21. Madame Xiao was not boasting. Yenji was given the title of assistant manager of the General Affairs Department. It sounded like an official post, but in reality, he wasn't even on the government's payroll. His salary was pitifully meager, and there was no hope of promotion at all. A fellow Jinsha from a poor family took his place and entered the Hanlin Academy. I didn't notice a thing about this. It was Yuan Jinghuan who told me. 5 years had passed since my son and I came to the capital, and this faithless man finally appeared. We hadn't seen each other in 20 years. His face was draped in an air of premature old age, though his features hadn't changed much. He spoke to me as familiarly as if we'd only been apart for 2 days. And the tender look in his eyes was still the same as when we first met. Once, I'd been utterly captivated by this amorous demeanor of his, but after spending all these years with my cold, taciturn son, seeing this act again only made my stomach turn, as if I'd swallowed a piece of lard raw. How shallow I was at 17, to promise him a lifetime just for his face. I stared straight at him, wishing I could go back 20 years and slap myself hard a few times. He clearly misunderstood. Took my hand affectionately, sighed, and said with a helpless look, "I had no choice in what happened back then." I didn't reply, and he went on, "Yenji is such a fine boy. Colleagues look at his face and guess he's my son. Mother has softened her stance too. Just persuade him. Let him recognize his ancestors and return to the clan. That way, that woman at home won't be able to mess with him anymore. Otherwise, with the Xiao clan's power, she really will ruin his future." My heart skipped a beat, and I asked, "Have you spoken to him already?" He nodded, sounding a little annoyed. "This boy is too stubborn. He won't listen to reason at all." A cold laugh rose in my heart. So he'd gone to see our son first, been flatly rejected, and only then come to me, Yuan Jinghuan. Now you care about his future. Do you have any idea how your mother humiliated us when he and I came to the door 5 years ago, now that he's made something of himself? Your Yuan family wants to claim him back. I leaned close to his ear and whispered 2 words softly, "Dream on." 22. That night I sat under the moon, drinking wine, By the time Yenji came, I was already a little tipsy. Son, is it all too hard for you now? If it's not going well, let's go back to the Medicine King Valley. It's not hard, with this idle post. I have plenty of free time, perfect for practicing martial arts with Master Jiang. I stroked his face, my heart aching. I know you'll never ask grandfather for help. I heard a storyteller at the tea house say that civil officials may look gentle, but they can kill without drawing blood. I'm afraid you'll get hurt. My son smiled faintly. That's why I'm pushing myself to practice martial arts like this. I'll take the martial arts examination and become the top martial scholar to still bring glory to the Su clan. I was not the least surprised he wanted to be the top martial scholar. This boy had always been resolute in his decisions. He'd probably had this thought 5 years ago. I just couldn't tell if he wanted to prove himself, or if he was just holding a grudge and trying to get even with the Yuan family. But why did he have to push himself so hard? With the foundation of the Medicine King Valley to fall back on, he would never have to suffer a single hardship in his life. Even the imperial relatives got sick, didn't they? In the end, they'd all have to come begging to us. But he just wouldn't. Sometimes I wondered if his life had been too smooth, so he deliberately sought out hardships. He was nothing like me in that way. The biggest setback in my life was probably being abandoned by his father. Oh well, children have their own blessings. As for me, I'll just do my duty and not hold him back. The next day, my son practiced martial arts as usual. The old beggar squatted at the base of the wall, squinting his eyes as if dozing in the sun. As soon as Master Jiang left to answer the call of nature, he suddenly stepped forward and attacked without a word. Though startled, my son met his moves calmly and steadily. After just a few exchanges, the old beggar suddenly said, "Your lower body is unsteady." His hands didn't stop moving as he added, "An unsteady lower body means you can't control a war horse. How can you go to the battlefield like this?" With that, he began to correct my son's moves. 23. Master Jiang returned with a displeased look on his face, but as he watched, his expression gradually turned to surprise, and he didn't dare say a single word more. Like my son, he tacitly never asked the old beggar's origins. I still called him old beggar without a care in the world, every single time. Yet my son always treated the old beggar with respect, never currying favor with him just because he taught him martial arts. The old beggar seemed pleased with this calm demeanor, but he was extremely harsh when teaching. Several times he even beat my son until he spat blood. I stormed over to argue with him, but my son stopped me. "Mother, he's doing this for my own good," my son whispered, then spoke of the wisdom that a strict teacher raises a skilled disciple. In the end, he even told me not to come to the training ground again. Later, the old beggar went to the horse market and picked out 2 fine horses, and began to teach him cavalry tactics. In the evenings, he taught him the art of troop formation and battle strategy. My son simply resigned from the idle civil official post the court had given him, and threw himself into the old beggar's room. They were inseparable almost every waking moment. My son's resignation caused an uproar in the mansion of the general who pacifies the state. The Yuan family had been military officers for generations. They'd finally had a descendant who could take the civil official path, and before they could even claim him back as their own, the boy had resigned outright. A few days later, old Madame Yuan came to the door in person, pointed her finger at my nose and cursed me, blaming me for ruining the child's future because of personal grudges. She said with deep sorrow, "Everyone says Yenji is just like his father. But my eldest grandson didn't even send me a message to celebrate when he passed the provincial examination." I thought back to 5 years ago, to the way she'd called my son a bastard, the look of disgust on her face still fresh in my mind. I let out a cold laugh and retorted directly, "That's not what you said back then. Back then, you said he didn't look a bit like Yuan Jinghuan, that he was a bastard from who knows where." Caught out, she insisted stubbornly, "He was too young then. His features hadn't fully developed. It was only natural for me to doubt it. Pa, I spat, who doesn't see through your little thoughts? It's only now that he's made something of himself that you want to claim him back. You snobbish old hag, who do you think you are to lecture me? Even if Yenji one day enters the cabinet and becomes a prime minister, he'll be raised and taught by the Su clan. He has nothing to do with your Yuan family. Now get out of here with your people. And if you dare step foot in this door again, I'll break your dog legs. Old Madame Yuan was too old to stand such harsh words. Her face turned white and then green, and she fainted dead away on the spot. When she woke up, she threw down the words, "I'll never meddle in this unfilial child's affairs again," and was carried away by her servants. 24. On the 12th day of the 7th lunar month, the results of the preliminary martial arts examination were posted. Su Yenji's name, tucked among the dense list of names, caused quite a stir. Many people in the capital remembered the same name on the metropolitan examination list the previous spring. Court officials talked about it endlessly. Some denounced him for being arrogant, others praised him for his bravery, and those who knew him said, "This young man is unfathomable despite his age. Like a hidden dragon in the deep abyss, he will surely achieve great things in the future." He had already been given an official post through the civil examination, yet he'd resigned just to take the martial one. Such an act even made several senior court officials, who had long stayed out of mundane affairs, stroke their beards and ponder as they looked at the list. If he really succeeded, it would be an unprecedented feat. The chief examiner, having received explicit instructions from his superiors, had already made up his mind to rig the assessment. To make sure he was eliminated from the list and failed without a name, unexpectedly, a sudden twist occurred. The Prince Rui, who had long closed his doors to guests and refused to meddle in state affairs, for some unknown reason, went to the palace in person to see the emperor and begged for the post of invigilator. This not only made the chief examiner break out in a cold sweat, but also left all the court officials who knew the inside story wondering secretly. Why had this long-dormant Buddha chosen this moment to show himself? On the 14th day of the 7th lunar month, the policy essays were graded. The invigilator marked Su Yenji's paper with the 2 characters mediocre and was just about to hand it over when the old prince's slow voice drifted over. "This paper discusses the defense of the southern border." Every sentence hitting the nail on the head. How can it be called mediocre? The invigilator's face turned bright red, and he had to pick up his brush and change the score. Over the next 10 days, troubles never ceased. On the 16th day of the 7th lunar month, mounted combat. The horse of Su Yenji's opponent suddenly went mad and charged straight at him. It was about to collide when the old prince suddenly said, "This horse has lost its senses. Fetch a tame one instead, lest the examinee be injured." On the 19th day of the 7th lunar month, hand-to-hand combat on land. Su Yenji's opponent looked abnormal. The old prince waved his hand, and the imperial guard stepped forward and searched his sleeve. Finding a short needle coated with mafezen, the old man said lightly, "The martial arts examination is for testing real skills. What is this underhanded trickery?" The man was severely beaten by the guards and thrown out of the examination hall. On the 21st day of the 7th lunar month, recitation of military books from memory. The booklet Su Yenji received was actually missing the second half. Once again, the old prince personally ordered someone to fetch a new paper, and said in a deep voice, "How can the rules of the examination hall be treated so frivolously?" Finally, on the 22nd day of the 7th lunar month, the day the final results were posted, the more than 10 days of twists and turns came to an end. Next to the 3 large characters top martial scholar on the red silk-wrapped list, Su Yenji's name stood out clearly for all to see. As the crowd cheered, the old prince looked at the figure draped in red silk and whispered to himself, "Old brother, a fierce tiger fathers no feeble cubs. Your godson is truly a dragon among men." 25. The day the top martial scholar paraded through the streets in red silk and colorful decorations was absolute chaos. The streets were packed with people on both sides, piles of lost embroidered shoes half a foot high, and children crying for their parents everywhere. Yenji, dressed in bright finery, rode on a steed, his posture as straight and tall as a pine tree. He looked like a handsome young lord, as elegant as a jade tree. Yet he was such a man, skilled in both pen and sword. Flowers rained down on him from all over the street, covering his whole body with petals. The sedan chairs of countless noble young ladies lined the roadsides. The young ladies cast aside all decorum, leaning out from behind the sedan curtains to catch a glimpse, their eyes blazing with adoration. When the parade passed the mansion of the general who pacifies the state, old Madame Yuan beat her Kang table in vexation. Such glory, this should have belonged to my Yuan family. To the sound of gongs and drum,
begging the court to dispatch troops to suppress them at once, Su Yenji, who had just been appointed captain of illustrious Marshal Valor, along with the newly recruited Imperial Guards under his command, was sent to Luoma Slope to suppress the bandits. The news from Luoma Slope reached me when I was drying medicinal herbs in the courtyard. The messenger Imperial Guard knelt on the ground, his voice trembling uncontrollably. "Madam, we were ambushed. The young master fell into a mountain stream, into a pond. We can't find him." The world went black before my eyes, and I had to hold onto the wall to keep from falling. The old beggar appeared out of nowhere, grabbed my cold wrist in a tight grip. "Don't panic, hurry to find Yuan Jinghuan. He commands a unit of the Imperial Forest Army. It's the only troops in the capital that can be mobilized at once without the Ministry of War's order." I rushed into the mansion of the general who pacifies the state like a madwoman. Yuan Jinghuan was sitting in the main hall, his face ashen, clearly having already received the news from Luoma Slope. When Madame Xiao saw me, she immediately curled her lips and sneered, "Oh, isn't this Sister Su? What's the matter? Your precious son is gone, so you've come to the Yuan family to wail. Of course, without the backing of this top martial scholar, your days ahead will surely be hard." Old Madame Yuan sat in the upper seat, reciting Buddhist scriptures with her eyes closed, then suddenly opened them and said coldly, "Su, what's done is done. Words are useless. Yenji was never a member of the Yuan family. And now that he's gone, it's just each man for his own fate, each man for his own fate." I looked at their cold, indifferent faces, the blood in my heart seething as if scorched by fire. "Do you think the sons born to Madame Xiao and Madame Shu are of the Yuan blood? I tell you, they are not of the Yuan clan at all." Madame Xiao jumped to her feet. "What nonsense are you talking about?" "Nonsense." I stared fixedly at Yuan Jinghuan, sneering. "Do you think I let you leave Jiangnan so easily back then? It's because before we parted, I slipped the love GU into your tea for the rest of your life. You can only have children with me." All the blood drained from Yuan Jinghuan's face in an instant, his eyes filled with shock. "Only my son." Every word I spoke was stained with blood and tears. "Only he is your real son, the only heir of the Yuan family. If he dies, your Yuan family will be without an heir forever." 28. Madame Xiao trembled all over like a sieve, her voice shrill and unsteady, filled with unconcealable panic. "Your words are empty without proof. You say my son is not of the Yuan blood. What evidence do you have?" I looked at Yuan Jinghuan, said nothing more, only secretly urged the GU worm. He suddenly clutched his lower abdomen, his face turning deathly pale in an instant, cold sweat streaming down his forehead, his body curling up in pain, a suppressed groan escaping his throat. He ground his teeth, the veins on his forehead bulging. Unable to hold on for a moment before crying out in pain, "I believe you, stop it at once." I withdrew my will. He collapsed on the ground gasping for breath. The look in his eyes when he saw me no longer held the slightest doubt, only fear. Puff! Old Madame Yuan suddenly spat out a large mouthful of blood, staining the front of her lapel red. "Hurry, hurry, and dispatch the troops." She grabbed her son's sleeve, her voice hoarse and broken. "Go to Luoma Slope, save my grandson, hurry." Yuan Jinghuan finally came to his senses, rushed out like a madman. "Saddle the fastest horses," send my token, mobilize all the Imperial Forest Army, follow me to Luoma Slope. But it was too late after all. The Imperial Forest Army searched for a whole day, only to find some tattered pieces of clothing on the shoal downstream. The man himself nowhere to be seen, alive or dead, Yuan Jinghuan, for mobilizing the Imperial Forest Army without authorization, committed the crime of overstepping his authority. Enraged, the emperor threw the entire Yuan family into the imperial prison, and the investigation result of the Luoma Slope case shocked the entire court and the public even more. After investigation, it was Xu Baoping, Yuan Jinghuan's concubine, who had bribed the fierce bandits to commit the murder. Xu Baoping had gone mad, fallen into the water and drowned, and the young master of the Kui clan, racked with guilt, had said it was Su Yenji who saved him. This resentment had taken root in her heart, and it was Madame Xiao who had pulled the strings and laid out the plot. Consort Xiao had grown resentful because my son had delayed in agreeing to the marriage. Her aunt Madame Xiao took the opportunity to incite her, making her niece harbor the intention to kill. Thus, a long-planned assassination, woven from the grudges of the inner chambers, linked to the personal hatreds of the palace, and colluding with bandits, was finally uncovered. 29. Yuan Jinghuan was finally spared the death penalty, sentenced to exile 3,000 li away, all his family property confiscated. His legal wife and concubine, however, were not so lucky. An imperial edict came down, sentencing both to immediate beheading. Consort Xiao in the palace, who had colluded with former court officials in private, also failed to escape, meeting her end with a cup of poisoned wine. This disturbance was investigated quickly and thoroughly, and anyone with a discerning eye could see that the Kui clan had lent a hand behind the scenes. I stayed in the capital for half a year. The day I left the capital, the sky was overcast, as if it was going to rain. Master and Madame Zhong and Mrs. Kui Zhong all came to see me off, standing at the city gate, chattering on and on with words like take care and come back and visit often. I suddenly asked Mrs. Kui Zhong, "Did you give the beauty-preserving prescription I gave you to the members of the Kui clan back then?" Mrs. Kui Zhong was stunned for a moment, then nodded. It was just as I had guessed. Consort Xiao had kept her beauty intact for years, skilled in preserving her youth, yet she alone had no children. Presumably, the prescription she had obtained had been tampered with, keeping her beautiful but cutting off her chance of having heirs. Mrs. Kui Zhong was still chattering beside me, talking about the glory Consort Kui now enjoyed, but I couldn't listen anymore, only feeling that every inch of air in this capital was hidden with invisible swords and shadows. I leaped onto my horse and did not look back, let the prosperity and intrigue of the capital dissipate with the wind. When I returned to the Medicine King Valley, a young man dressed in black martial attire was standing at the entrance waiting for me. "Mother," his voice was not loud, but as steady as a mountain. He stepped forward a few paces, took the horse reins from my hand. "You must be tired from the journey. The porridge is warm on the stove." I looked at the shallow scar on his forehead, my heart tightened, yet only asked, "Has Prince Rui arrived?" "He arrived 3 days ago," he replied crisply, then added, "Godfather said you should be back these days, told me to wait here for you." Just as he spoke, the old beggar stepped out from behind a tree. "Thanks to the hidden guards he arranged in advance who saved you, your life was preserved." Yenji smiled faintly. "Yes, the prince said there would be a great upheaval in the capital, told me to fake my disappearance to avoid it." As night fell, a few plates of marinated delicacies were placed on the stone table. A pot of strong wine warmed to perfection. My father, the old beggar, and Prince Rui drank together. Yenji was fortunate enough to sit at the edge of the table, responsible for adding dishes and pouring wine. "Godfather," he put down his wine cup, his eyes clear and bright, "if I have children, the eldest son will take the surname Su, the second son the surname Bai, to continue your family line." The old prince's hand trembled, some wine splashed onto the table. Then he burst into loud laughter. "Good, good. The god of war Bai Zi should never have no heir." My father nudged the old beggar with his elbow. "You always say Yenji calls you godfather. I'm 1 generation above you for no reason, taking advantage of you. Now my Su clan is giving you a son back. What more do you have to say? The old beggar took a big gulp of wine. Cough. Yenji is a good boy. But you old rascal sent someone to lure me to the capital just so I could be a master to your precious grandson, didn't you? Prince Rui said. This old fox is ruthless enough to plot even against his own biological daughter, let alone you. Only then did I understand why my father had not told me the old beggar's real identity. Because I can't act. These 3 men are all old foxes who have lived for 1,000 years. Yenji can barely be called a young fox, and I'm just a silly goose. Thinking further back, that year when I was 17, when father let me go out into the world, he probably wanted me to bring back an heir, keep the son. Leave the father. Father is indeed ruthless enough.